SMQBs, this is episode 152. Lots to talk about today. Rooster, who are you bringing to the bar to kick things off?
Well, I am going to Indianapolis later this week to the Combine to report on behalf of the SMQBs, and I am hoping to run into the Giants GM, Joe Shane. And I want to ask him, are we going with the offensive line, which we so desperately need to fix, Joe Alt or Olu Fashanu? Or are we going to go for some flashy wide receiver like Malik Neighbors or Roma Dunze? All would be awesome, but in my view, until you fix the offensive line, the rest of it is a waste of time. So that's what I want to know is what's the plan? I can't believe they'd take a quarterback. They've got $40 million tied up in Danny Dickhead.
I hope they take a inside linebacker. House, who are you bringing to the bar?
Well, now that spring training is underway, I think I'm going to sit down with our Phillies manager, Rob Thompson. Just ask him to experiment for just a handful of games. Take my word for it. Let's start the lineup with Trey. Let's push Kyle Schwarber down the lineup just a little bit. I just want to try it. We don't have to start a guy that strikes out 5,000 times a year and only hits home runs as your leadoff man every year, just to hit solo home runs. That's who I want to talk to, the bar.
Hope?
Damn it, House. Every time you go before me, so I'm going to have
to
call an audible. I wasn't going to bring the Phillies manager, but I was going to bring Bruce Bochy.
You should.
Well, I'm going to bring him, and I'll bring in Chris Young, our GM, too. I think I have a drink with both of them.
Which one of your teams are you talking about?
Oh, which team is this?
Sorry.
It's like, since when did Bruce Bochy manage?
Excuse me. The world champion Texas Rangers. Sorry to got confused there. And we're going to talk about what we're doing about our starting pitching because until DeGrom and Scherzer come off DL, July, June, maybe August for DeGrom, we're going to have a patchwork starting pitching rotation. And, we have Uvalde, and Dunning, but we need to get Jordan Montgomery back. So I'm going to have a conversation with them about what's it going to take to get Montgomery, who was kind of like the unsung star last year, last part of the year, and then during the World Series.
I'm shocked he's not signed by somebody.
You should probably have a drink with Scott Boras instead of your manager.
Well,
yeah.
There's a lot of theories about why. He's 31. Are you going to really sign him to a long-term deal? He's not getting the money he thought he would get, so maybe he takes, you saw where Bellinger signed, also another Boras client. Maybe he takes a little bit less money, stays with the Rangers for 1 or 2 years guaranteed, and sees how the market plays out. Kind of essentially a 1-year contract going forward and seeing how the market plays out. But we need starting pitching, and he's somebody who could really fill out the rotation.
All right. I'm bringing one Michael G. Rubin to the bar.
Yes.
You know who he is, House, right?
Oh, yeah.
The CEO of Fanatics. And he's got some splaining to do from what I could tell. Speaking of baseball and everything, spring training, probably the biggest story are these uniforms. And I want to ask some questions about exactly WTF is going on here and how are they going to fix them?
Yeah.
Yowzers.
So we may revisit that at a later point in the show. I have a sneaky suspicion. So let's get into it today. We're going to start off with a little March Madness bubble watch. Hope?
Excuse me. Sorry.
He got choked up over
his verklempt.
I've made the mistake of trying my bourbon.
Oh, God. What did it do? Snip one of your balls off? Because it sounds like your voice went down.
It hit a little hard. Bubble watch. Bubble watch. Yeah. It's the reason I have Rick Pitino on my background is because I don't believe that they're on the bubble, but some do on this pod.
Yeah.
That St. John's is going to play their way onto the bubble. But who played themselves off of the bubble, and we'll talk probably more about the consequences of that game, is Wake Forest. They were first 4 out until Saturday, and then they beat Duke at Wake, which was beautiful, by the way. And then all hell broke loose.
Not really. It wasn't so great.
All hell broke loose after the game, but the game itself was beautiful. And so Wake Forest, gets off the bubble probably, unless they, lose out or lose in the first round, big upset in the ACC tournament. I see them off the bubble. Texas A&M didn't do themselves any favors against Tennessee. It's hard to tell, with the major conferences beating each other up like they are, who ultimately will make the tournament. But House, you'd sent around this list of teams that were close, like Pitt. I've seen Pitt. I don't think they're an NCAA team. Hell, I don't even know if Virginia is. They're played
awful.
Some of the worst.
God, they're horrible to watch. They're horrible to watch.
Well, right now they're a 4 seed. I mean, they're in the tournament.
Yeah, they are.
But God, they have 20 wins, and they are just a horrible offensive team. Defense,
they struggle to score more than 45 points in a game.
Yeah, I mean, they had like 6 points with 5 minutes left in the first half against Carolina. So, I don't know if we saw a lot of movement, quite frankly, for teams other than ones I'm talking about off the bubble. House, you're watching the bubble closely. What are you seeing?
I mean, it's all these Big East teams. I mean, they're just like cannibalizing one another. So right now, there's any number of Seton Hall, Providence, Villanova, Butler, and St. John's, all of whom still have a little bit of work to do. I would probably say Seton Hall is the closest of those to being in.
And they play St. John's this weekend, right?
I think, is it Seton Hall that has it? Because I know Butler's got I know that St. John's has something like Butler, Georgetown, and somebody else. Maybe there's Seton Hall, but someone in those losses, like I think Butler has a couple games left against some of those teams. That's going to clear out all of this. The Big East, I think, is part of what's going to affect the bubble the most.
And it's the right thing to do in that situation, right?
Let them all in.
You put all the Big East teams in.
They don't normally fail that bad.
Right. Just put them all in.
They know how to play in the tournament.
Yeah.
Like this Michigan State team is not as advertised. They were supposed to be a very good team this year, and they are having some bad losses now.
They lost. They won. They were ahead of their game against Ohio State for all but 6 seconds of that game. That's a bad loss.
They were preseason top 10.
I mean, are they definitely in? I guess. I mean, they're close. New Mexico,
of course,
didn't New Mexico just lose to Air Force? Like a 7-win Air Force team?
Yes, like a buzzer beater.
And of course, all it takes is 1 or 2 teams winning their tournaments, going on a run,
right,
and winning in their tournament to get in. That screws the whole thing up even more, right? Like, I mean, Georgetown did that a couple of years ago, where there was no way they were making the tournament, and then they went on a run and won the Big East tournament and got in. And it was like, who got stuck? Who fell off the bubble because of that?
A lot of bubbles will get burst come conference tournament weekend.
I mean, I know it's not the bubble talk, but there's been so much discussion about how like I guess it's Houston, UConn, and
Purdue
and Purdue who are locked in as the number ones, and then there's like a big drop off to the quality after that, like a huge drop off. I think the same thing is going to happen the closer you get to the bubble. I think a lot of it's going to be, I'll be impressed for the people that pull off a really good bracket this year, because I think a lot of those 7, 10, 8, 9, even the 6-11, 5-12. They're going to be really, really hard to predict because the amount of parity is ridiculous. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but there's going to be madness. That's for sure.
Here's some parity for you. Tennessee, Marquette, Iowa State, Arizona, Carolina, Kansas, Duke, Auburn, in that order, 4-11, all have records of 21-6. That's pretty amazing. All records of 21-6 from the 4 to the 11. So yeah, you're right. Nobody's really stepped up for that 4 seed.
Or Gonzaga's 20-6, and they may not make it.
Well, and here are the odds too right now for the national champion. If you want to bet on the national champion, the odds I'm seeing are UConn plus 525, Purdue plus 750, Houston plus 750. Then we go Arizona plus 1300, Tennessee plus 1300, and then North Carolina plus 1750. So you can see, I mean, it's kind of, at least from the odds point, it's UConn, Purdue, and Houston.
Who the hell is buying stock?
You guys notice that Bison was shaking a little bit before he started to talk about betting?
Yeah.
That's a little twitch. Did you see the twitch?
He was having a little withdrawal.
Once he got into the odds, he seemed to calm down a little bit.
Ooh. Oh, listen, you pussies, put the money on something.
Milk's a bad influence on you.
Corn Fairy.
Pope won't even download the app. He's so afraid of it.
You know, there are some teams like San Diego State, like Dayton, Utah State, even. I mean, teams whose RPI is much higher. There's, the whole thing about the Pythagorean wins, the wins that they probably should have had relative to competition. There's some teams that could the Pythagorean wins. It's like another, it's another measure of, like,
I mean, you got Ken Palm, and now you've got
there's a ton of them. But the point is, like, for example, I did not know until Rooster jinxed them last week when he had UConn last week in last week's discussion that basically UConn doesn't win on the road, and certainly doesn't win on the road against Creighton, against top teams. UConn struggles against top teams on the road. So some of these records definitely are a little bit misleading coming in the tournament, but
I mean, like, who can you count on, right? Like to go into this tournament, can you count on Purdue?
No,
they're going to go out the first weekend. Can you count on Arizona? No, never. They're out the first weekend.
They got Caleb Love. He's streaky.
I mean, like Auburn. Is Auburn a team that's going to win the tournament?
Nope.
I don't know.
I'm still trying to figure out what a hypotenuse triangle has to do with college basketball. What are you talking about?
It's a new one.
What are you talking about?
The Pythagorean theorem.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Yes. House, we'll make sure we place our bets. We'll make our bets against Pope and Phelan. Okay.
For sure. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's no question about it.
We're going to fill our brackets out. We'll kick both your ass.
All right. Listen, give us right now. Everybody give a team, to watch. Just somebody that, you kind of want to see what's going to happen to them. They're going to get in, they're not going to get in, or they're going to be fun to watch in the tournament.
Now, mine is Kentucky. Good Lord, are they schizophrenic? They just totally boat raced Alabama 119-95 last weekend, and this is the same team that lost to LSU on a buzzer beater, and they're so inconsistent, but they are so talented. I do not want to play Kentucky. Watch out.
Yeah, I'm sticking with St. John's. St. John's remaining schedule is this Wednesday at Butler, at DePaul, and home against Georgetown. They should win easily their final 2 games, and if somehow they beat Butler on the road, that gets them to 18 wins, and they're playing at home in Madison Square Garden for the biggest tournament with Pitino, the great motivator, maybe obnoxious asshole, but the guy, he can coach. So if he gets these guys into form, that's going to be an interesting team to watch. They've had some good wins. They had a fallback there, which was what led to his spaz out against Marquette, Providence, and Seton Hall. He lost those 3, but now they won the last couple 2, including a huge win on the road versus Creighton, or no, at home against Creighton. At home against Creighton. And we'll see if they pull off these last 3. I'm very interested to see if Villanova and St. John's both get to 18 wins, what they'll do.
They need more quality wins.
I'm going with Tennessee. I hate SEC basketball. I just hate the idea that they're relevant. But I don't know. I'm very intrigued by the Vols this year. And I just think that they could make a pretty fun run.
I mean, Rick Barnes isn't necessarily an SEC coach. He's, got ACC chops. So they're a little different team.
I'm gonna go with Creighton. I'll tell you, man, I watched that whole UConn game, and their center is as good as UConn center. He could carry a team far into the tournament if Creighton plays well. I think his name is Ryan Kalkbrenner. He's really good, and the team's well coached. It's got some good shooters on the team. I don't know how the hell they followed up a win over UConn with a loss to St. John's, but I could see that team going on a run. And, they have a lot of stiff competition in the East. They're playing a strong schedule all year long, unlike some of these other conferences where, teams with good records haven't really played anyone. I like Creighton. I think it's a good team.
All right. Anything else on the bubble watch this week? We got a little ways to go, but we'll keep our eyes on this for you.
Not 3 weeks from now, we'll be putting our brackets together.
Yeah.
Not long.
All right. Unfortunately, the biggest story in college hoops this weekend, Rooster, talk to us a little bit about what else happened.
Well, at the end of the Wake Duke game, what's been happening 3 times a week apparently in the last couple of months in college hoops happened again, where the fans were allowed to rush the court, and Kyle Filipowski was like all the way on the opposite side of the court of where he needed to get off the court. By the time he got to half court, he was just engulfed in Wake fans racing across the court. And it's sometimes fun to hate Duke, but he could have been stampeded. He could have been stampeded. He really could have been hurt very badly in the midst of that melee. He was knocked down and got right back up, but he could have been kicked in the head. People could have crushed him, whatever. It's just stupid. I think it's stupid. If you're gonna have rushing the court, whatever they've tried to do to stop it hasn't worked. The Big East, the Big 12, the SEC fine schools for allowing this. Hasn't stopped it. ACC doesn't even fine anyone. If you're going to do it, you have to make sure that the players get safely off the court before the fans come rushing in. It's just stupid. And someone needs to get hurt.
I think I said after the Tulane beat someone and they rushed the court, that rushing the court should be reserved for only beating the number 1 team in the country at Duke. And I guess maybe I have to amend that now.
Always Duke.
Yeah. That, like I said, if you want to allow your fans to rush the court, I guess go ahead and do it. But you've got to make some provisions for getting the refs, the players, and the coaches out of harm's way before that happens, because it's just not right that one of them gets hurt.
I mean, I'll just say this. If you look at the slowed down video of the Caitlin Clark episode and the Filipowski episode, both of those players were looking to hurt fans. Filipowski.
That's bullshit.
What?
You got it.
That is bullshit.
What?
Welcome to the dark side. Welcome to the dark side, house.
Take a look at the video. Filipowski gives an elbow shiver and a trip.
If you had 100 people rushing at you, you'd be swinging.
And you just lost the game.
I would be. If I saw all these people coming at me, I'd start swinging before they got there. That doesn't mean I'm trying to hurt
Then
somebody.
you turn the ball over with 2.4 seconds left.
We've taken away almost everything from college sports.
Oh my God!
Uh,
That's from the
almost-
guy. Why don't you put him in the trunk of your car with the other with Taylor Swift?
Taylor Swift.
Listen, I will say this.
He's a little taller.
I got the chance last year, at age
To rush a
50
court?
something, to rush a field, after Tulane made the Cotton Bowl by winning our conference championship, and it's pretty fun. I have to say, it is a pretty fun exercise to do that and just be out on whatever playing surface it is with the
I'm guessing you were
just
wearing
go
a
crazy.
jersey too, right?
I wasn't in that one. I did not have a Tulane football jersey. But look, college sports, there's very, very little left of the innocence to college sports. It's corporate, it's conference conglomeration, it's NILs, it's semi-pro at this point. You can't rush a court in pro sports. That much is for sure. You can't do that. But college sports, there's something about, back in the day at the Palestra, they used to throw toilet paper from the top of the stadium down on the court, and the game just stopped until they cleared the streamers off the floor. It's a fun tradition. There's a way to do this. I don't know how you get security on the players and the refs and the coaches right away so that they don't get hurt, but there's a way to do this than just like all of a sudden be the fun police. And I do not want to see the ending of court storming. That would be bad.
Well, that's the point I was making, is there's got to be a way to allow it and just delay it for a minute until the people can get out of the way. Just make an announcement where if you're going to rush the court, you can't do it until everyone's off the court, whatever. And if you do, you'll be shot in the head.
Takes away some of the spontaneity, though.
I would like to go back to the part about Caitlin Clark trying to hurt fans.
Yeah, that's the most absurd thing I've ever heard.
You have to.
I just watched that clip today, by the way. Neither of them saw each other coming. The fan was running full steam ahead, didn't see Caitlin Clark, and Caitlin Clark may have given her a little bit of a shiver, but it was defensive. It's like she was about to make contact with somebody running full speed.
Well, I do wonder if there's a way to do this, though. First of all, thinking about where players have to exit courts, right? I mean, it does seem like these teams, whenever there's an incident like this, it seems like the teams are so far away from where they have to go to get off the floor. It doesn't make any sense, right? I mean, there should be, I don't know. It seems like that's an easy way to start, is to have a very easy close entrance or exit for the players to get them off the floor.
I listen, I do agree with you that some of the court rushing is it doesn't really match the game involvement. I mean, fine. Tulane hadn't beat somebody in the top 10 in forever. I don't know if they've won a game since, but that's besides the point. But I mean, I kind of get that rushing the court, but some of them now, it's like an 18 team is rushing the court, beating a number 11 team or whatever. I do think it's been a little bit overdone on rushing the court, but part of why they want to rush the court is they want to be on the court with the players that just got them their victory. So getting everybody out of the stadium, the players and the coaches, that's like, rushing the court's the same thing as like hanging out at the bar later.
Well, then they need to get a life.
All right. Anything else on rushing the court? No. Okay.
I have some. Yeah. Tell Duke, just don't lose. Then we won't have that problem.
Is there another Duke UNC left this year or no?
Oh yeah. At Cameron next weekend.
Next weekend. Okay. Yeah.
Well,
we want to see you rushing the court, Pope.
Let's wait till
no, the Dukies aren't going to rush the court if they beat Carolina. They expect to.
Yeah, exactly.
They act like they've been there.
Act like you've been there before. Exactly. All right. F1 season. It's upon us. It is here.
Vroom, vroom.
Yeah. All right. So let's do a little quick preview here on this. First of all, a couple new teams or team names to at least be aware of. So I guess AlphaTauri is now Visa RB, linking up a little more with their Red Bull.
Cash out.
Yeah, isn't it? What is it? Cash App?
Yeah, apparently they're going to be called V-Carb this year. Visa Cash App Red Bull, V-Carb.
Oh, Cash App. All right, so that's the old AlphaTauri team. And then Alfa Romeo is now Kick Sauber. And do they still have do they have to drop the stake or something like that because there's no gambling allowed in some places?
Somehow I think they held on to it.
I think they did too, but there was something like that at one point. Suffice to say, that's probably the last we'll hear about either of those teams this year. So let's move on from there. Okay, couple lame duck drivers that'll be interesting to watch are Lewis Hamilton, who is announced his move to Ferrari next year. So this is his last year driving a Mercedes. And then we have Carlos Sainz, who's losing his seat at Ferrari to make room for one Lewis Hamilton. So those will be two interesting drivers to watch this year. Carlos in particular, who's going to be looking for a place to drive next year. I really think Carlos is one of the top 5 or 6 drivers on the grid. So that'll be curious. I think what you're looking at, and tell me if you disagree, but I think there's 3 people competing for a Red Bull seat. I think you've got Daniel Ricciardo, Carlos Sainz, and Checo competing for Checo's Red Bull seat.
Well, what has Mercedes said they're going to do to replace Hamilton?
I don't know, but they
Isn't
have
Carlos an option there?
I think he probably is. But they also have some really young drivers that they might be looking at. I don't know. I guess that's a possibility. But I still think that Red Bull seat's going to be the premium seat.
There's a rumor that Albon, who
Yeah.
used to be racing for them, has a right to that seat too down the road.
Yeah,
So
well,
I think
he's a
it's-
good
I think it's even
driver.
more than that. He is a good driver. I think it's even more than the folks you said. I think
We'll
Albon's
see.
in that mix too.
Pope, what do you think? You don't think so?
I think Christian Horner would love to put Danny in that seat if he could. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, but
I think
Why?
Well,
why? It's like coming full circle. I mean, he still thinks, when Danny did his test, of course I saw
yes,
episode 2
I
of
know.
season of the Drive to Survive last night, but when Danny was in the Red Bull, he finished his lap as he would have been next to Verstappen on the grid. So I think Christian Horner thinks if you put Danny in a Red Bull, car, that he's going to be probably better than Checo.
I think Checo's the best available driver.
There is a father-son type relationship between Christian and Danny Ricciardo.
And
there is.
If Christian's out at Red Bull, then Danny's never going to get that seat.
Well, we'll get to that in a minute.
Danny's his wingman.
Yeah.
But it's funny. You mentioned the premier guys that are a kind of in a sitting duck situation this year, but it turns out there's 13 out of the 20 drivers this year are in the last year of their contract. We're going to see a very, very different grid in terms of the drivers next year. So this people are kind of driving for a contract, which should be fun.
Yeah, there could be a lot of movement next year. And one of the things I think could be fun about this year is Red Bull is still, they're the defending champions. They were dominant last year, and you have to put them in a league of their own right now. Put an asterisk next to that because we'll come back to something on that in a minute. But after that, Mercedes, Ferrari, McLaren, and Aston Martin, that's wide open. I think. The knock on F1 lately has been, well, Max is going to win every race, and we know that. But, man, those teams, I think it's going to be pretty intriguing this year to see who's second, third, fourth on that grid and in the constructors. And can they challenge Red Bull? If you have 4 teams that are really close and competing, what does that do to that? That amps the pressure up on Red Bull quite a bit. I mean, every week, every circuit is different, and some of these cars will thrive in different circuits. I think there's going to be a legitimate competition week in or race in, race out against Red Bull. I think they're going to feel a lot more pressure this year than they did last year. No, House, you don't think so?
No way. I think it's a runaway for the constructor for sure.
And for
Red
Max.
Bull, and for Max. But I do think you make a great point, especially about place number 3 in constructor. I think Ferrari has enough and early returns on that car. I think Ferrari has enough to lock down the second spot, but I think this is going to be really fascinating this year between McLaren and Mercedes for that third spot. Piastri was the real deal last year. Lando is a phenomenal driver. I think Lando is a top 5 driver on the grid. And I don't know, how hard is Lewis going to push it? I think Lewis cements his legacy if he's the great competitor and gentleman that he is and gives his everything to Mercedes in this last year. But if for whatever reason he's just not fully into it and he's already like in that Ferrari car for next year, then I really think that McLaren can push for that third spot.
Lewis seemed to be pretty happy after testing with the car.
Yeah.
So as long as he feels like he's got a chance to compete, I bet you he doesn't check out, because that 8th world championship that's a big one to pull down for him, and he's running out of opportunity. So, all right, and then the last sort of storyline that I flagged, and I think we all know it, are these charges against Christian Horner. Apparently, he's being investigated for some type of sexual harassment claim. It seems like there's some text messages out there. He's denied any wrongdoing. He's not been suspended. He's not been asked to resign. He's not going to resign from what I've read about it. But if you want to look for a way that Red Bull stumbles this year, keep an eye on how long this drags out and what comes up. I mean, don't underestimate how important the guy at the head of the team is. And let's see what happens. Gosh, I was reading some of the stuff about it, and I got to tell you, I really felt bad for Ginger Spice. His wife, Jerry Hollowell, I mean, she is apparently just devastated by this. And he's saying that he didn't do anything wrong and that this is make believe. I don't know what the text messages show, but I mean, she's not going to be at the race this weekend. And apparently she's almost like just gone into solitary on this, which is really pretty sad. I mean, we look at it as a sports story, but there is a human story here too. So, that's the way that I could see Red Bull really getting tripped up, though, is how long this story stays in the news.
Maybe in terms of the constructors, but you could be the principal of Red Bull this year and Max is still going to win, in my opinion.
Probably. I think that's probably true. Although I think I'd be a damn good principal of Red Bull. So
that'd be a great story.
Yeah.
Little known, trial lawyer out of DC goes from practicing law to becoming a CEO of a major
Ted Lasso
Formula One.
We'd have to change it to a bison instead of a lasso.
That would be awesome.
Right.
All right,
what do you guys?
I got a question for you. How many races did Max not win last year? Was it 1?
No, I think it was 2 or 3.
Well, Checo won 1. Did Red Bull not win every race? Was there another podium?
Right, Carlos
won
a race.
Yeah, there was a Ferrari win.
All right, so what's the over under on races that Max will not win? In other words, Max wins, 20 races, doesn't win 4 or 5. I mean,
I put it at 2.5.
2.5.
I think
that's pretty amazing.
I don't think he wins as many this year as he did last year.
Oh my God. The car's faster.
Yeah.
But they're all faster.
Yeah, but this one is like, people are in awe of this one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
they're already like a year ahead of everybody with this car.
All right,
that's what they were last year.
I'll go 4. That's my over under. He won't win either over or under 4.
Well, you just set the over under. So what are you taking, the over or the under?
No, he's going to win less. He's going to win whatever.
You're going to lose. Yeah. You're going to say he's going to lose less than 4.
Yes.
You know, it's interesting you say that, Pope, because Rooster and I were talking this weekend for our fans. For our fans, the 5 of us do. We pick 2 drivers every single week, and you rotate in the order that you pick them. So if you get to make the first pick in week 1, well, then you don't get the first pick again until week 6. But what it turned out last year is that every single week, whoever had the first pick just took max, and it was an automatic 26 points, 25 points for the winning the race and the 1 point for the fastest lap. And so I think to make this a lot more interesting to see who's got that racing acumen, we might just scratch out Max as an option.
Yeah, so you can't pick Max even with the first pick. That'd be kind of fun.
That would be interesting.
What our fans think. We'll let you weigh in also.
Well, that essentially is what Formula One is now. I mean, you just rule Max out, and then let's see who, goes 2, 3, 4, and where they finish with the constructors. Isn't that what Bison's saying? Basically, that's where the interest level is.
Well,
I think
you have to find something to be interested in. Otherwise, I mean, if you want to see somebody besides Max win, you're going to be awfully disappointed.
Well, but I think and we've talked a little bit about this before. I mean, I think this is a little the nature of Americans versus, European fans in sports. There's something to be said for the competition between the teams that are competing against each other. Okay. Right. So like we know that Williams and Haas are competing against each other, right, to do better. And so that's that battle. We know that, Alpha Tauri and I don't know what, what's Kick Sauber this year and Carb are going to be racing against each other. I mean, the Europeans are much more interested, I think, in watching these individual battles. It's not all about winning. It's the racing, the competition, who's on their own level, especially in a sport like this where there's vast money differences in who's spending what. So that the battle between 2, 3, 4, and 5 could be worth watching in and of itself, even if you know who's going to win the race.
For sure.
Leo Rusher is
I think that's
over in his grave.
That's where we are in 2024 F1. I mean, we started watching this during the COVID years. I mean, that was when you were having the great battles with Lewis and Max, and then the great race where they went down tied to the last lap. I mean, we're never going to see that again.
Yeah,
we have to be happy with where we are.
The 6 years before that, or the 5 years before that, Mercedes ran away with it every year. So I mean, and this is what the Premier League is, right?
Not really.
It's more competitive this year, but yeah,
6 teams at the top and 6 at the bottom and 6 in between, right? I mean, isn't that fair? Every year?
That is true. Well, you could say that about a lot of sports.
Yeah, but it's still fun to watch the games.
I wish that they could do something to make F1 closer to international soccer, where you almost could have relegation of drivers or I don't know what other leagues, something that would make the midfield, the 4 through 6 and the 7 through 10. I mean, other than the junkies like us that are looking at that, there's not a lot of intrigue to that. There's not a lot of consequences. I mean, I guess some of those drivers, there's some dollars and cents involved, but for me this year, one of my storylines is a weird one, but there were too many races last year, at least 3 or 4, where they made these guys drive in ridiculous conditions. And I hope the FIA doesn't make us the watchers and then the drivers play through driving downpour again. Hopefully they can figure out the logistics of it, where it's either delayed enough in a certain day or goes over to the next day, because that was not fun. And I know the drivers hate it. It's a real life or death situation when they're driving in those conditions.
I think it's going to be a more intriguing season than a lot of people think. I think there's going to be a lot of interest in it. It's going to be a fun season.
I'd like to see him go to figure 8 tracks.
All right. Anything else on F1?
Yeah. Bahrain, kick it off.
All right. We're going to go to our bourbon review segment. Rooster and House. I think you have some bourbons, multiple bourbons from what I heard.
Yeah, we
reviewed for us.
Looks like you did a tasting.
We were
contest.
together Friday night and Saturday night. And Friday night we went to a really great bourbon bar in Richmond called McCormick's Whiskey Bar. And
Could be our first sponsor.
We sampled a couple of great bourbons. McCormick's had in stock one of my top 3 favorites, which I can never get anywhere, called Elmer T. Lee. Elmer T. Lee died in 2013, and his company was taken over by none other than Buffalo Trace.
Oh boy!
And it is a very.
Are you on the payroll?
It's a very expensive version of Buffalo Trace, but the same smooth, caramelly kind of flavor. So it was delicious. And House, what was your first one?
My first one was the Jefferson's Tropics, which is aged in humidity. So Jefferson's Ocean has this very interesting, we all visited it recently in Louisville, and they have this very interesting approach. They will oftentimes age their barrels in all kinds of different conditions. And they had one that was pretty well known called Aged at Sea, where they put a certain number of barrels out on the ocean. Well, this Jefferson's Tropics, they put 700 barrels and started on an ocean ship in July 2019, setting sail for Singapore. And they went through crazy severe heat and humidity conditions, which slows down the caramelization of the sugars in the wood. And then they released it in 2023. And it goes for about $100 a bottle. So it's a pricier bourbon, but it is phenomenal. It's very, very easy to drink, very smooth to drink, super caramel flavored. And they had that one there. And
House, is that different than the Jefferson's Oceans Reserve, the different years?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Because that's just confined in the tropics, not all over.
Correct. Yeah. Really, really fascinating way that they age their bourbons. And allows you to get to a whole bunch of different, voyages that they have for Jefferson's. After I was done that, I just felt like mixing it up. And so I asked the bartender for a recommendation. If I like Jefferson's Tropics, what else should I try? And he said, have you had John Bowman? And I said, I'm not familiar with that one. So he poured me a little glass of John Bowman. And what's cool about
if I had been more sober, I would have intervened. I don't know. I was off my game.
It's very cool. They put your glass of bourbon in front of you, and then they put the bottle as well, so you can really take a close look at what you're drinking. So they put the bottle in front of me, and I'm a little bleary-eyed. We'd had some drinking even before the bourbon bar, and I turned to Rooster and I said, Rooster, I think this bourbon is made in Virginia. And after he was done howling laughing, we took a look at the bottle, and sure enough, John Bowman bourbon is bottled and made in Fredericksburg, Virginia. It's not often the bastion for bourbons in this country, but it's okay. You can go on.
Turpentine, it was pretty good whiskey.
Let me tell you, there's the filibuster bourbon out of Virginia isn't bad either, actually.
Here you go. I'm not familiar with the game of Virginia bourbon.
It was horrible.
What was your other one? Another one, Rooster?
Well, it's not distilled by Buffalo Trace, so why would it?
Yeah, I actually just went back to the standard Buffalo Trace for number 2 because
of
course you did.
I figured at that point I didn't need really expensive bourbon. No,
because you're an old man who just likes habit and doesn't know anything.
No. I mean, the glass of Elmer tea was almost like $40, and I was hammered enough so that I probably wasn't going to tell the difference on the next one.
our recommendations to our listeners are grab yourself when you can. It's hard to find. Find yourself a glass of Elmer T. Lee and find yourself a glass of the Jefferson's Tropics aged in humidity. Very good.
Yep.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Punch.
All right. So I gotta do this. I mean, sorry. I mean, I love Michael Rubin. He's, a principal of the Sixers now. I think what he's done overall with Fanatics has generally been great. He's a Philly guy. I have no idea how it came about that Fanatics got its hands on the contract for the MLB uniforms, but what they have done is absurd. Like, I really am wondering, are they going to fix this by April 1st and by opening weekend? The pants are straight up see-through. They're like, if you see all these team pictures that people are taking, they're straight up see-through. In one picture that was taken of two Cleveland Guardians pitchers, they had different sleeve striping between the two guys. They got jerseys that had a different sleeve stripe. One had a thin stripe, one had a thick stripe that was moved off of the bottom of the cuff. It's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. But the letters, like, you need a telescope to be able to see the letters. So a lot of these guys, like, you're gonna have a hard. Well, I guess you don't have to see Soto's name because I guess the Yankees don't wear names. Well, maybe they do on their grays, but any of these guys with small, short names, you cannot see their names, especially if there's pinstripes. They're tiny, tiny, tiny. What were they thinking? Or what kind of money were they trying to save? Or what were they doing? I mean, I think their whole idea is if you want to buy a replica. By the way, there was a pitcher, I think, it was a player on the Mariners. He received his actual jersey from the Fanatics, and the numbers on the back were not aligned. And like, they were off. And he had to send in an email to the Fanatics, saying, I just received my jersey and it's off. And they're like, oh, they send like a robotic message back. We are so sorry for the jersey. We will be happy to replace it and send you out a new one. What is going on? Bison, do you know anything about this?
So what I understand is that they were trying. I mean, it's literally like the Yankees, like remember the Seinfeld episode where he says, like, cotton. We got to get them in cotton. It'll be so much more breathable. They'll be cooler out there. And then they shrink down and nobody can remember that episode. Yeah. Well, so apparently the idea is that these are fabrics that are cooler, lighter weight. They're supposed to be more, technical, athletic fabrics than cotton, than the old school, cotton uniforms. And the idea, and so because like sewing the numbers on and the letters on is heavy, they silk screened them on. And so all of this is part of making them, more friendly to the athlete. That's at least the story that they're pitching at this point, no pun intended. But it seems like the execution a bit outside because I mean, it's really embarrassing. And let's make it worse. Apparently, half the teams at spring training don't even have their pants yet. They're wearing pants from last year because they haven't delivered and fulfilled the orders like they were supposed to at this point. This is a total clusterfuck for both Nike and Fanatics, because Nike is the designer of the uniforms. Fanatics is the I guess the manufacturer of all of them. So I don't know what the F happened, but they got to do something, right? I mean, they cannot start opening day.
No way.
No
way. I mean, doesn't Major League Baseball somewhere in its executives have someone that's responsible for uniforms or whatever else are the hats that they wear? But didn't someone say, okay, let me take a look at the prototype. Let me see it on a human being. Oh, that's great. I see through and see his balls.
You would think, I mean, because it wasn't too long ago that the teams had their own contracts, right? So like you used to have like Nike making some and Russell Athletic making some. And I mean, it wasn't under one contract. So now it's all controlled by MLB. So yeah, I mean, there are a lot of punches to throw in this case. And I mean, somebody's going to have to just, Rob Manfred's going to have to fall on the sword or something and say, this is not acceptable and we're doing this over.
Brutal.
All right. Any other punches? Someone's got a lasso?
Got a lasso. This is a story about clinging to one's roots, hanging on for dear life, and ultimately succeeding. And of course, I'm talking about the 5 hairs that are on the front of Tom Thibodeau's head, where that he combs back. I think, early in the season, everybody was like, "Man, Tibbs, you got to shave that thing. It's embarrassing." But they went on this winning streak until everyone got hurt, and I think the 5 hairs on his head now are like similar to Big Dom in Philly. We just can't get rid of them. They're a reason for winning. So it's part of the team's juju, and I just think, here's to Tibbs, man. He hung on to those 5 hairs, and they've become valuable. They've become an asset to the team, and good for him for not succumbing to peer pressure and shaving the ridiculous little patch off.
Incredible.
Wow, that's
so. Wait,
quite
I
a
want to go back.
lasso.
Wait,
Kind of
was that
heartwarming.
real?
Is
Isn't it?
the
a real
lasso
story?
for the 5 hairs or tips?
Is that a real story?
Yeah, it's heartwarming. I almost cried while I was giving that.
Okay, we might have to suspend Roosevelt Lasso qualifications for a little while.
His privileges.
Can I add another lasso then?
Yeah,
I feel
sure,
like I need to also.
Yeah, top that, man.
Fucking Jason Sudeikis is gonna file a cease and desist, order again.
Last year I think we did a lasso, and we get to repeat it this year because returning as champs in the Virginia basketball Special Olympics are none other than the Henrico Hornets, led by one Kate Phelan. And I came to really drink some bourbon and party with Rooster this weekend, but in the process of doing that, I had not firsthand gotten a chance to watch this tournament of these folks, because it's not just kids. I mean, it's young, old, all on these teams at the Special Olympics tournament, and it's an inspiration. And I mean, it is the way sports should be played, with teammates supporting one another, very little attention to the clock or the score, just enjoying the game. And yeah, the medals are great, and congrats to Kate and the Henrico Hornets, but it was just fun. The first thing that struck me was that none of the players were looking over at the score. They just didn't care. They were having a great time, and they were trying really hard, and they were playing really well. It was great to watch, and I think that tournament is what the Lasso is all about.
Kate may have been the exception to that, though. She was playing Queen's "We Are the Champions" before the game even started, on the way there in the car.
Yeah,
guaranteeing a win to House.
Awesome.
Nice. That's good. That's
all right,
better than Tom Thibodeau's hair.
Yeah, hopefully this will top that too. Bison, this is near and dear to your heart because it actually arises out of the Corn Ferry tour.
Oh.
So a PGA golfer won his first tour event in Mexico this week. He 2 years ago was a bouncer at a club in Los Angeles because he had lost his Corn Ferry tour card, but in order to make money and stay able to continue to play golf, he was a bouncer in addition to his day job at a club in Los Angeles. He was able to requalify for the Corn Ferry Tour. His conditional 13, his placement at 13 last year gave him a conditional tour card this year, and he converted that with his first win on Sunday. Shot a 19 under even round. He hit 2 fairways in the final round, which is the least number of fairways a winner at PGA Tour has hit since they started keeping records back in 1983. So this guy has now punched his card to Augusta 2 years after being a bouncer at a nightclub. I think that's a great story. Also, kind of ish lasso it to Anthony Kim, who is playing his first, and I will say it, competitive golf on the Live Tour starting next week in Saudi Arabia. He's been off of competitive golf for 12 years since he had a really bad Achilles injury. He used to be, one of the fan favorites, was a Ryder Cup star back in 2008. It's good to see Anthony Kim back, and hopefully that story will continue and we get to watch it.
So just to be clear, Hope is giving a lasso to somebody on the Live.
Let's mark that down. Let's mark that date down in history.
He can't get on the PGA Tour, so they're giving him the exhibition opportunity to see if he has anything left in the tank, and I applaud him for that.
All right.
It's easier to do 54 holes in shorts as opposed to 72 holes, walking in the heat.
I'm not lassoing anything to do with that fucking tour. Note my objection for the record. Any other lassos? All right, how about some buzzer beaters?
Quick buzzers. As we watch the Jurgen Klopp retirement tour from Liverpool, one of the best managers to ever manage soccer. It was fun to watch Liverpool with most of their team injured on the sideline, playing with a bunch of kids, kids that really mostly are on the bench or on teams that, they call up to Liverpool. And in extra time, they beat Chelsea in a really, really great League Cup, the Carabao Cup. So here's the Jurgen Klopp. And I saw a story today that the Cowboys are not going to tag Tony Pollard. And here are the running backs that we could see in this offseason move. This is crazy just how much this is a passing league and nobody cares about running back. These teams don't want the following running backs, really. Tony Pollard, Austin Eckler, Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, and maybe even DeAndre Swift too. What is going on? I mean, those are like truly some of the very best running backs all football. And the teams are like, okay, you want to leave? Go ahead. No problem.
And it's not like they can draft somebody that good. I mean, there may not be a running back drafted this year until the 4th round.
I guess the position doesn't matter. It's crazy.
Well, it's because teams have, like the Zeke Elliott contract, signed these guys after their rookie contract to these long-term deals, and there's been an albatross around their neck until they can finally get rid of the contract 4 or 5 years later. They don't want to do that, and they don't need to do that.
All right, I got a buzzer beater here, sticking with the NFL a little bit. The salary cap has been announced. It is up to $255 million this year, 30 million more. It's a 13.6% leap, and the largest leap in the cap since they started the cap 30 years ago. And 30 years ago, the cap was 34.6 million per team. This year it's 255. And of course, that doesn't even consider that they can also dish out $74 million on benefits like bonuses, retirement packages, things like that. So the total spend is $329 million per team, or $10.5 billion across the league. And that's something to keep in mind, that they have TV deals worth $126 billion between now and 2033. So, wowzer, that is a lot of money to dole out. That's my buzzer beater.
Mine is, I want to commend to all of our listeners a recent article in The Athletic about the Black Aces that focused on my second favorite pitcher of all time who's not a Yankee, Dontrelle Willis. Just a wonderful guy. I mean, since Mark Fidrich, there hasn't been a pitcher who pitched with such joy as Dontrelle Willis. I loved that guy. But the interesting thing about this article is talked about when he was a rookie in 2003, won the Rookie of the Year award. He was only one of 5 black starting pitchers in the league, and that really hasn't changed a whole lot. Which is why they came up with this concept of black aces. If you're a 20 game a year winner, you're a member of the black aces. Before Dontrell won that in 2005, he won 22 games. The last guy to do it, to become a black ace, was Dave Stewart for the A's in 1987. I think it was his third 20-plus win season back then. But here's the interesting thing about this article. I forgot how good of a hitter Dontrell Willis was. In his final year in 2011, he was playing for the Reds. He batted .387.
Wow.
Now, of course, that didn't count because he didn't have enough at bats. But
sure,
he was a hell of a hitter. He really was. So it's a great article. You should read it. You'll really enjoy it.
Yeah, I saw that article. So
another quick one is I'm getting ready to go to the combine, and so I'm doing a little research on hits and misses on past combines. And do you know that Tyreek Hill was not invited to the combine in his year? I mean, that just shows you how wrong they can get it.
Yep. That's what scares the crap out of me.
Drake.
All right, guys. Anything else?
The only buzzer beater I have is that with Rooster going to the combine, you need to do some investigative reporting, because Peter King is reporting this afternoon that he thinks the Bears are going to trade Justin Fields. So we need reconnaissance on that, Rooster.
I've heard reports that they're going to trade down twice.
They should. They have so many needs on that team.
Yeah.
They get a lot of value for those picks.
Yeah. So maybe you wind up with Caleb instead of Drake. That would be good, Bison.
That would be better. I would even take Justin Fields.
Yeah, I would
Harrison
too.
Jr.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Anything else?
Have fun at the combine,
All right, guys.
Rooster.
Good show.
Thank you.
Have a good week, everyone. See y'all.
See ya.
Bye.